Remain calm. Just give us a few minutes. We are going to start.
Damaris, you are muted. Damaris, you are muted. Damaris, you are muted.
Hello, Damaris, you're muted. You're on mute.
Hello, everyone. So, welcome to today's webinar. My name is Tam Damaris, and I'm the head of communications for RADA. RADA is the Reconciliation and Development Association, and is a non-profit that seeks to promote community development in the domains of health, peace, agriculture, education, and technology. So, today's webinar on peace and settling of differences is part of our endeavors to engage the community in peace building processes in Cameroon to ensure that the community effectively and meaningfully participate in peace building processes in Cameroon. So before we go on, I just want to give a few housekeeping measures that you ensure that you pin your questions, your comments into the chat box, and we'll raise them after our speakers must have done their presentations. So right away, I am honored to introduce to you Mr. Ferdinand Somyoy, who is the CEO and the president of the Reconciliation and Development Association. Are you there, sir?
Yes, Damaris. Thank you very much for that introduction. I'm just noticing the presence of Eric Combe. That's one of our speakers of today. I think he has successfully joined. So thank you very much for starting the meeting, Damaris. Our primary focus on bringing people here today is really because we want to remind ourselves of the understanding, the good and the hope, and hence effort to settle differences. You know, over 500,000 people have been displaced. 3,000 and more have died, and we have also over 100 security forces have concerned. But the community is the actual owner of peace and the actions toward upholding it. If the community is strong in its understanding of its conditions, it acts appropriately towards resolving its own problems. Over 2 million people have been severely affected by the current crisis in Cameroon. And in most cases, people act on something only when it has personally touched them. As a program manager for non-communicable diseases in the Cameroon Baptist Convention Health Services, for the that I've been for, I was for the past 5 years, I had an experience that I'd like to really share. One day I was in a meeting in Yaoundé, and my wife called me and told me that our son had been diagnosed with coronary heart disease. I immediately left the meeting and down on my knees on the dust and the stones behind the Ministry of Health I went, and I cried in prayer, and I asked the Lord, and I said, if my child had to have a chronic non-communicable disease before he gets my commitment to work on these diseases, then I don't know. So at the same time, I committed myself that day, and I said to myself that I have to be committed to my work on non-communicable diseases, whether my child has a condition or not. So the best reason I found out to be committed to any cause is simply because it is the right thing. is simply because it is the right course to take. You see, if something is right, we should do it. The only qualification for us to do something is that it should be right. So when we're doing something, if that thing is right, then we should do it. If it is wrong, then we should stop it. Now, so many leaders, whether big or small, tall or short, at home here in Cameroon or abroad, silent or loud, we all have to learn to do things because they are right. We need to start taking notes. We need to act. We need to speak. We need to try to be meaningfully engaged to contribute to conflict resolution, to end the kinds of conflicts that we have. It is not only when we are personally touched by it that we should contribute to ending it. So we must all act. I would end my small speech by indicating that one of the key words in RADA is reconciliation. And reconciliation simply means settling differences. It is from the concept of reconciliation that we now have to ensure that peace building in Cameroon. I'll give an example of what reconciliation really means. If you were given a 10,000 francs to go to the market and to buy, if you belong to an organization that is responsible, that organization would require you to bring back what they call a receipt. And if you went to the market and you spent less than you bought, or if you bought more than you were supposed to buy in terms of how much you spent, when you come back to the organization, there will be something called reconciliation. Because before you go to the market, they give you what they call an advance. And so when you come back, you have to reconcile the advance. And that means you have to settle the difference between what you have in hand, your receipt, and what you were given at the bursary. That is called reconciliation. And so reconciliation is basically about how do we settle differences. Differences must exist, but how do we make sure that we settle them? I think that we have very important speakers here with us today. And one of the greatest things I'm happy about is that we have youth speakers, but we also have experts who are going to speak to us on this topic. And so I really want to welcome you all to this session. And I hope that you have a good session and that we're going to learn and also spread the word in the community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Samuel Ferdinand, for those kind words, those very confident words. Thank you very much. So right away, we'll be having youth voices. They are volunteers with the Reconciliation and Development Association, and they are volunteering in the domain of health, of peace. So we want to get their perspectives on the subject matter. And right away, I'm going to be introducing to you Do Miriam, who is a master's degree holder in English private law from the University of Bamenda. And Miriam, I want you to give us your perspective on what you think the role of the community in peace building is. What do you think is the role of the community in peace building?
Hello, Damaris.
Hello.
Thank you for this opportunity. Good afternoon, everyone. As earlier mentioned, I'm Do Miriam, and I'll be talking on the role of the community in peace building. Peace, as we all know, is a very important aspect in our society. Without peace, the nation as a whole will be in chaos. Peace is often discussed if this is just the responsibility of the government alone. However, peace is not just a responsibility of the government, but it is a responsibility of every member of the society. No one person, activity, or level of society can deliver and design peace by itself. It involves each and every member. It starts with me, it starts with you and everybody. So it's a collective responsibility. It involves a system of interconnected people, rules and activities linked together and affecting each other with people at the core. Peace building builds and supports interdependent relationships necessary for pursuing and sustaining changes, which means that it is in order for us to achieve the peace we so much desire, we must develop processes that also forge relationships between people that are like-minded. The community can contribute positively towards the notion of peace building through the use of social media. One thing that is for sure is that the social media has opened up new opportunities for public engagement, interactive dialogue, and change the relationship between states and citizens. Social media and the sharing of videos related to things like regimes, violence, and electoral fraud has contributed to transparency and accountability. That has appeared to contribute to new norms, which have gone a long way to promote peace, because when we post some videos concerning electoral fraud, it will at least check some people and you will see peace will reign. Then the community can contribute also positively towards peace building by funding home-based organization, because most civil society, especially those in the Northwest and Southwest region, rely on funding from international donors. It has widely been acknowledged that this reliance on international funding opportunities has compromised the accountability of peace building towards the communities these organizations serve. They are more sensitive to the needs and requests of the donors rather than the needs of the organization, of the community. So if the society is encouraged to participate in peace in funding this organization in the peace building process through funding these organizations, and it will go a long way to make the organizations to be more sensitive towards their needs and go and implement peace. So the population can participate positively by funding this home-based organization, and the government should also step to assist this organization through fundings, but without influence. The government should not have any influence. Their fundings should not have any influence. So communities can contribute positively to peace building by educating and training the population, especially the youth. Shared values of respect, tolerance, and love for one another should be encouraged. If I love you, if I love you as myself, and I'm my neighbor's keeper, I think it will go a long way to promote peace. Finally, freedom of expression is cardinal in peace building. When members of the community are allowed and encouraged to express themselves positively, peace will reign. Damaris, I'll leave my presentation here by emphasizing on the point that peace building is a collective responsibility. It involves each and every member of the community. Thank you very much.
So right away, we'll be moving on to Hazel. Nangi Hazel is a master's degree holder in public law from the University of Bamenda, and she volunteers with RADA in the domain of peace. I call her a crusader for justice. And Hazel, I want you to give to us your perspective on what you think stakeholders or parties to a conflict should do to ensure that civilians do not get caught up in an armed conflict, or that civilians are protected in a situation of conflict.
Thank you, Damaris, for this opportunity. Like rightly put, I am Nange Hazel, and today I'll be talking on the protection of civilians during armed conflicts. We discover that armed conflicts keep reoccurring in the society today, despite the various measures that have been put in place to resolve disputes and conflicts peacefully. However,
It looks like we have lost. It looks like we have lost her.
the dynamics of, in order that they will not face a lot of devastating effects as it was the case before. International humanitarian law has come to protect civilians
Hello, Hazel.
This convention doesn't regulate.
Hello, Hazel. We have a hard time hearing you. Maybe if you can reposition or something.
Yes, Hazel can hear you.
Okay. So when we are talking about the civilian population which needs to be protected, we are and the persons who have been termed the most vulnerable. And these vulnerable people involve women, the elderly, and the physically challenged, to protect these people's rights even before the time of armed conflict.
Thank you very much, Hazel. Thank you very much for that perspective. Jones, are you on? D. Jones is a master's degree holder too in English private law, and he volunteers rather in the domain of peace. Jones, I would like you to give your perspective on what you think the role of the youth in peace building is.
Okay, Damaris, thank you for this opportunity and for the opportunity given to me to share on this topic, the role of the youth in peace building, which comes at a time when youth are at the forefront of perpetrating barbaric acts in our society today. Actually, the lives of youths are more tough than actually portrayed. And we discovered that youth can actually play a role in peace building. They can either be the peacekeepers themselves, and at times they are victims in the armed conflict. But we discovered that the inactivity of youth in peace building nowadays is as a result of lack of employment and limited resources and lack of economic opportunities, among others. However, it is necessary for the government and the stakeholders to include youths in their functioning organization and networking, because it strengthens peace building and limits the violent extremism. Again, it is necessary for policy makers to give youths the opportunity to be part of the decision making in circumstances that concern them. And actually, we have to reckon the fact that youths are agents of peace building, and the youths on their part are encouraged to be the change they want and not necessarily wait for change. We must look for non-violent ways to resolve conflicts, and it is important to do this in living together. And then again, youths in our non-governmental organizations, we need support. They need to be supported by the government and all other stakeholders in the domain. So conclusively, I can only recommend that the government should pave way for these people to be part and parcel of the peace building activities, and this can be done by giving them the necessary chance to show their enthusiasm and their peace building capacities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jones. Thank you for those wonderful words there. Gail Callistus is going to be our next speaker, and he is a master's degree holder in literature and cultural sciences. He currently volunteers with RADA in the domain of peace and in the Department of Communications. Social media plays a vital role in the people on Facebook. Can you give us a quick one?
Hello? Can people get me? Okay, thank you, Damaris, for giving me the opportunity to give my own opinion as far as building peace, settling differences in Cameroon is concerned. I am actually talking about, like you did indicated, Tange Callistus, and I'm talking from the I looked at this process of encouraging people to talk. I emphasize on people to talk. To talk means to communicate and to communicate in this language. It is a process. So this relationship between knowledge and media communication. The power of media communication in shaping the minds of citizens on the internet as that of language. Language is not just not seen as simple of communication, but also a powerful weapon used in expressing is how people view and think about the world. It is one of them, like we are sitting here today in our video space and are talking about it. Therefore, the media plays a vital role in modern community you don't have a programs on television, on radio, you see that issues and issues at the end of the virus, not because they don't have good ideas, but because they interact with each other. And they actually want to emphasize on the fact that the meaning of words, etymologically meanings words of their meaning, but they are being influenced by the words in association or the context. Therefore, you need to master when you want to discuss sensitive issues like peace building, people need to know, need to emphasize to know what, when, how, and who you are addressing. All of these are key issues in addressing.
Callistus, I think your network is really terrible. Hello, Callistus. I think your network is really terrible. Damaris, can you go to Heather? Let's come back to Heather and see if her network is good while expecting Callistus.
All right, sir. So I think Hazel has said quite much about the subject matter. I'm thinking we should go over to Basil. Basil, are you there?
Great.
Basil, are you there?
Yeah, hello, I'm there.
All right, I would love to introduce Basil to you. Basil is a bachelor's degree holder in law, and he too is a volunteer in the Department of Peace. Basil is quite an interesting young man, and today he's going to be giving us his perspective on what he thinks are the strategies that can be employed at this moment by stakeholders in trying to solve or resolve the crisis that we have in the country at the moment. Basil, over to you.
Madam Moderator, yes, I'm your friend Basil. I will be talking actually on peace building process strategy that I thought can bring back peace to the two regions of Cameroon, Northwest, Southwest. And before we can go dive into peace building is a very long process that cannot be achieved just in a day. And the first thing that we need to have is ceasefire. We cannot actually lay emphasis on this because if there is gunshots everywhere, there will never be peace. So the first thing that we should be looking at is ceasefire in all the camps that are involved in the conflict in the Northwest region. We will also look at the cultural differences right from the colonial era. We have French in the eastern section, and we have the British culture here, which are two. And obviously, these cultures need actually to be recognized in Cameroon because these are two different people coming from two different backgrounds. That is why the rule of bilingualism should be actually implemented. We will also be looking at the historical background, and the historical background too will also go back to the colonial era. We cannot lay emphasis because it will still go back to the cultural differences. And I would also like that there should be a creation of a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which should be headed by men of God who are fearful, that are neutral, that will look into actually what's happening in Cameroon. They go to the root causes of this crisis, and to look at the culture and also tackle the people who are suffering from the crisis, right from the grassroots. Because when we look about the national grand dialogue that was held in Yaoundé, it was more of elitists. That only elites partake in the national dialogue. But the people who are suffering are right down there in the villages, and they actually need to be involved. So for the national dialogue to be successful, the government needs to actually carry out a survey in the grassroots to feed into it that everybody's decisions are being felt. Another problem that I saw that actually is happening is that youths are actually unemployed, and when you look about those who are that took arm, you see that they are not illiterate, but people who are already frustrated. So government should actually think about a strategy to put youth into policy making in Cameroon. And we also talk about infrastructural development, which is a very key point here. When we look into the two regions of Cameroon that are into conflict today, we see that their infrastructure has actually been not been developed. We look at the example of the road linking Bamenda to other regions or the Northwest to other regions. You see, if you move through that road, you understand what I'm saying. So finally, I will look at the perspective of a family. When you talk about a family, you talk about a father and the children. Let us take a child that is frustrated and is not happy in their own house. How should the father solve the problem of that frustrated child? The father should look into what actually caused the problem of the child before looking into anything else. Because if you don't know what actually the child that caused the problem of the child, you will not solve his problem. So such is skills building. They should look deep into peace into the root causes of this problem and try to work to avoid possible crisis in the future. So I will come to the end of my presentation with a quote from late Kofi Annan. He was speaking on October 2011 at the International Conference to Promote Resolution of Conflict in a Basket Country. I quote, "Making peace ultimately requires the firm commitment and extraordinary courage on the part of all sides to ensure a permanent end to violence." End of quote. Thus, for a positive change to be felt in Cameroon, everyone that has been affected will be involved in the process of peace building, and every group should work together. Every group should not run away from each other. Thanks, Madam Moderator.
Thank you very much, Basil. Thank you very much. Those were quite some insights there. So, Mr. Ferdinand, are you on? I would love you to quickly go through our chat box and see if we have some comments or questions, and you quickly read them to us. Mr. Ferdinand?
Yes, I'm here. Let's see whether we have. Okay. For now, we just have Papin Gaye. I think he just says, "Bonjour tout le monde." Wait, and then we have. So we basically do not have any questions, and we don't have any major comments. So I think we can move on. Yeah, we had sound is too bad. I think we can move on and to the next speakers. I think we can move on to the next speaker because we don't have questions or major comments on the chat.
All
so
right.
Meanwhile, please, if the next speakers who are coming up as they speak, if you have any questions, please put them on the chat or comments. We will be able to read them because everybody's voice counts.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, Mr. Ferdinand. So right away, we are going to the second segment of the webinar, and I am very humbled and happy to introduce to you Ms. Sally, who is the founder and CEO of Comagen. Comagen is the Center for Common Common Action and Development, and she is also somebody who has been very, very vocal as far as what is going on in the country is concerned. And if there is anybody who has a mastery of how the Anglophone crisis has evolved and what it is at the moment, and has advocated at all levels, giving recommendations to various stakeholders on how this conflict can be tackled, it should be Madam Sally. I'm very happy to have you on the panel today, ma'am. Welcome. I'm Sally.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope my sound is the best. Let me just get a thumbs up if my sound is okay with everyone so that I can flow normally. Okay. Thank you. It's very enlightening and heartwarming when we find young people who concern themselves with what is happening in our country, what is happening in our regions, and what is happening in our homes and our community. It gives hope, it gives joy that there is this look on us all, thinking of a better Cameroon, a better Northwest region, a better family, and a better community. We are going to look at issues. I want to reconciliation and also settling of differences. We should just take a quick back look of what conflict is all about. Conflict is when people see the same things differently. It's just a question of perspective, how you look at it, how I consider it and how you consider it, and how you feel about it and how you express it. So these feelings and perspective leads people to think about insecurity, think about inequality, think about injustice. Now, with the current situation and with all the beautiful expose from the young people on what peace building is, the role of the government, the role of the community, I would like us to get a bit practical. Now, for every community to rise above conflict and settle their differences to be able to live together, people must move forward to take responsibility. When I talk of responsibility, I'm talking responsibility in acknowledging your contribution to what is going on as the conflict and your contribution that you can make genuinely to make sure that the conflict comes to an end. Now, let us take a practical way of looking at our differences as a people from the Northwest and Southwest region, together with the country, Cameroon, that we belong in, and we are citizens of that country until another decision is reached. Now, we need to put our values and ask ourselves what we seek to get. Do we stay on the lane to blame, or do we stay on the lane to fix? It is a question of playing the blame game or stepping forward to fix what is wrong. It is important that each and every one of us, we realize that reconciliation has different steps that we take to be able to reconcile our society and be good with each other once again. Following the current conflict, we have the head-on conflict, which is the political content of our conflict that is talking about the state. What form of state do we want? The conflict is talking about the people, the minority English-speaking community and the French-speaking community. Now we break it down. The conflict is talking about marginalization. The conflict is talking about discrimination. That's how we are coming down. Now, within this conflict, there are other smaller conflicts of this community fighting against this community. Last week, we got information from Ndu, one of the communities around Ndu, where we have houses being burned. That is an intertribal conflict. These are all issues that we need to reconcile, because if we don't reconcile these issues and accept where we have common ground and change from the negative energy we are bringing into our interrelationship with others, we cannot gravitate towards our civic engagement and strengthening the governance issues of our country. That now brings us to the fabrics of families. There are different conflicts that exist in our families that we grow with it, and it influences the way we respond to the external society. Like when we grow in a home where there is discrimination, issues of gender, where the boy is treated like a king and the girl is treated like the servant, that is social injustice. That boy grows up to always think that he has the right and might not remember that the rights of others, like the rights of his sisters, have to be respected. This already transcends into the way, if that individual were to come forward to do governance issue, the person is going to react. Injustice might have been normalized in their way of being, given their socialization process in their different families. So now, bringing into context to the Anglophone crisis, what I will say is, reconciliation and settling our differences lie in our abilities in accepting our contribution in the existing conflict and also faithfully contributing our energy to see that everything gets right. With the context of the Anglophone crisis, we have this bad phenomenon where A is expecting B to take the first step and B is expecting A to take the first step. Now, let me go more concrete. The government of Cameroon tells us that it has put different measures to be able to resolve the ongoing conflict. But we are yet to see this conflict being resolved. The people of the Northwest and Southwest, on their part, have a dream on what they think the government should do to be able to reconcile the people and have this social cohesion that we dream of, this peaceful coexistence that we are looking forward to. So that brings us to a point where if we as people do not separate our contributions in bringing peace, where reconciliation, you have to reconcile with yourself. You need to reconcile with yourself. Because of the pressure of the conflict, we have taken very extremist positions. We have done things that has contributed to the existing conflict. And to be able to have a sound and sane mind, you have to reconcile with yourself and understand that those extreme positions are not what we need. Now, the prolonging of the Anglophone conflict, we might not discuss all the political issues and resolve all the military malpractices in our country, in our communities, but we as a people can start by rebuilding our families and our social structures within our communities so that we move towards addressing governance issue as a people with one direction. I know my point of view on reconciliation becomes problematic when we have extremist position. I see reactions even from the audience in this discourse who feel that it is the other way around. If we always put reconciliation and give it a pattern, academicians will tell you that for a peace process to move forward, the government needs to call a ceasefire. The same government will tell you that the separatists need to lay down their arms. It becomes an argument. But when we reconcile with ourselves, we start with what can work, what is in our capacity to do, so that we move together as a people and try to resolve our conflict. Now, given the question of the Anglophone crisis, if we were to have a conversation today, us as people of the English-speaking region, we are yet as a people to speak from the same perspective. We have different dimensions of perspective on how the common factor, the Anglophone crisis, has to be resolved. There are people who feel that we should have complete independence for this conflict to be resolved. There are people who think that we should have a federation. There are people who think of one Cameroon. Now we need to reconcile our demands. We need to look at the balance sheet. I like what Ferdinand did at the beginning of it, putting reconciliation in simple terms. What do we have? What is doable? What is it that we can do as a people concretely, not our dreams and wishes? Now, reconciliation becomes problematic when we become very static. We stay on a position for so long without doing any compromise. If I were to give a word to the young people of our country, to people who are listening to this webinar, I will say, build tolerance in your vocabulary, be a bit more tolerant, try to strike compromises, make sure to understand that you need to accommodate other opinions and find common ground. Make sure that you put humanity first, because when you put humanity first in all your interaction, what happens is that it is easy to have that soft spot, reconcile with your neighbor, settle your differences, because you realize that peace is ultimate. For reconciliation and settling of differences to be a reality, we must adopt the theories and tenets of conflict transformation. We need to practice transforming every conflict, so that in the process of transforming every conflict, then we are in a way able to accommodate each other. The issue is we should take away hate, because when we propagate hate speech, it keeps hurting people, and because people continue to get hurt, there is no room for talking and reconciliation. My dear people, to settle our differences, we need to make conscious efforts, be intentional, stop arrogance and pride, stop justifications, but try to look at what works best for humanity. For despite our diversity in views, despite our diversity in age, despite our diversity in religion, one thing is obvious: we are all members of the human race. And one thing that is clear is that violence affects each and every one of us. There is no day that when they shoot a bullet, we are going to find a bullet, say, no, I'm looking for a woman to kill now. I'm looking for an Anglophone to shoot, or I'm looking for a Francophone to shoot. What happens when a bullet triggers out is it takes down a human being. My dear people, let us reconcile and settle our differences at the level where we have the capacity to do. Blame shifting and expecting the others to go first prolongs our pain and denies us of peace that everybody craves for. I rest my case.
Thank you very much, Madam Sally. Thank you very much. I always feel blessed listening to you because you give quite some insights into a lot of issues that we are confronted with in our society. And peace is one of the subject matter that you handle so well. And so you were just so appropriate for this topic. Thank you very much for giving your perspective to the subject matter with us today. And just to add that Madam Sally is a woman peace builder and a feminist. So always expect to get her gender perspective on things. She believes in the gender discourse of things, and you cannot expect less when you call her on every subject matter you want her to talk on. Thank you very much, madam. So right away, we'll be moving on to our next speaker for today. His name is Mr. Eric. Mr. Eric is a community solutions fellow. He's one of the two people that he's one of the pioneer fellow who went for the community solutions program. He's also a youth health advocate, and he has quite some interesting insights to share with us today on the way of conflict. I'm very humbled to introduce and welcome you to our panel discussion today, sir. Welcome.
Thank you, the moderator, Maurice. I want to thank RADA and its president, my humble friend and fellow, Mr. Fedi. Congratulations for the wonderful work that you're doing in building our beloved country, Cameroon. I also want to acknowledge the very strong insights from the previous speakers. I'm asked to talk on what is titled The Way of Conflict. And just like our last speaker highlighted, what is conflict? Conflict simply could be defined as a clash of interest. And we all know that it could be at a very micro level, even from our families, from two or more people, to a macro level, which is cross-boundary conflict. And we all know, I repeat, just as the last moderator or the last speaker highlighted, that it might be as a result of injustices, distrust, even as a result of scarcity of resources, discrimination, differences in opinion, or helplessness. So all these are elements that help, to bring about conflict. But I don't want this our discussion to be, under pressure. I want it to be very relaxed. So on our chat box, quickly, if you can, what animal do you think represents conflict to you? I want to see quickly some answers on our chat box, if you can. What animal do you think represents conflict to you? Somebody said a lion. Yes. A rat, a snake. Mr. Jato said the jackal. All right. That's cool. Well, to me, I would say a monkey. Well, that's my own animal, a monkey. Now, the second question, what other animal do you think can be used to describe peace? Quickly on our chat box. All right. Obaru said giraffe, peace. What animal can be used to describe peace? The giraffe, two people already. Animal that can represent peace. Okay, we have two answers, giraffe. Perfect. And you should have reasons for that. And you can add the reasons on our chat box. I will go in for a dove. Yeah. Now, the next question I will ask is, should conflict always be seen as a problem? You either answer a yes or a no. Should conflict always be seen as a problem? Somebody said no. Damari said no, no, no. Somebody said yes and no. That's interesting. Somebody said no again. Jatema said no. Sandrine said no. Ndang Kingdom said yes and no. That's good. It's good to have all those perspectives, because most of the times we feel that conflict is, all about problem, it's all about trouble. But I would like us to look at conflict from another perspective. Conflict should also be seen as an opportunity to be seized, as an occasion to be taken advantage of. So conflict shouldn't only be seen as a problem, it should be seen as an opportunity to be harnessed. And if we look at conflict in that way, we'll be able to know how to approach conflict. And that is why we have as our sub-theme today, the way of conflict. How do we approach conflict? Therefore, we need to learn that to engage in conflict, we need to engage in conflict in such a way that it is able to transform us all in order to achieve positive impact, in order to lead to growth, in order to lead to the development of our communities, of individuals and groups, rather than tearing people and communities apart. So we should also try to look at conflict as something that can lead to some positive results. And that is now why we have as our sub-theme, the way of conflict. Now, what are some of the practical guides that will help us approach conflict in such a way that it wouldn't only tear individuals, groups, and communities apart? It can help us in realizing, in achieving concrete, positive results at the end of the day. What are some of the things that we need to do? What type of approach, do we need to take in order to arrive at? The first thing that we need to know is once conflict arises, we don't need to run away. We need to embrace it. So don't try to avoid it or pretend that, oh, nothing has happened. You don't want to do that. Now, the second thing before conflict is you try to slow down, assess the situation, and ask yourself questions about the whole thing. And of course, by asking questions, you want to give others a listening ear in order to be bared with the information that are required to establish an objective conclusion at the end of the day. The next item I will propose is to remain calm. Even sometimes if we are faced with conflict, there is pressure, there is tension and all of that, but try to be physically calm, at least not externally. Try to have yourself, calm. Don't make hasty decisions, rashy decisions, immediately there is a situation at hand. Just try to hold your breath and calm down. Don't be overly sensitive and dramatic. Some people will get into physical confrontations, verbal attacks, and so on and so forth. No, immediately you sense that there is a conflict at hand, you should be able to calm down, to relax, to have yourself, assimilate, acquire what it takes, to mitigate the conflict or to have it resolved. The next point is you need to get energized and galvanized and see that, the signs of this conflict are rather preparing you for something bigger. So it's like you should gather momentum and say, okay, now this is a situation. I believe that at the end of this situation, I'm not going to be at the same level. It's going to take me to yet a bigger level. Once you have all this in you, these are elements that are going to prepare you for a positive outcome, even though it's a conflict. Next is to try to develop a logical approach to address the situation. By logical approach, I mean, don't be subjective. Try to be objective. Try to look at if you are involved in the conflict. Try to look at your own role there in that conflict. Try to don't be partial, in your judgment. So that's why we talk of a logical, approach to the situation. But however, also take note of the emotions of others, because once there is conflict, some people get into what I call strong emotions like anger, frustration. They want to express their frustration, their disappointment or despair, and so on and so forth. Now you need to be very careful, because if you are part of it and you're not careful, it might lead to, as I said earlier, physical confrontations, verbal attacks, and excesses, and so on and so forth. And before you know, it will lead to the destruction of both material properties, and you want to name them. So you have to be very, logical in your approach, but mindful that once there is a conflict, some people have the tendency to manifest strong emotions, like I said, anger, frustration, dismay, disappointment, etc. The next point I will put forth is you should be able to employ creativity in your actions, in your thoughts, and also enthusiasm while providing your solutions. For example, talk with the various factions involved. If there are multiple factions, try to talk to them. You can also try to organize an inclusive dialogue. And of course, dialogue is a whole course on its own, that you want to take. But just take note of, like the location of the dialogue that will favor every party or every faction involved in the conflict. The next point is you should be able to find, make sure that the point of agreement, it places everybody, the point of agreement, at the end of the day, you should be able to please everybody. That is why at one earlier I said you should put forth a logical approach in addressing the situation. And so when we are talking about the point of agreement, we mean some people at least should be ready, even yourself, to sacrifice something, to forego something, in order for a palpable solution to be, achieved at the end of the day. But if everybody wants to stick on his or their own positions, it's really going to be very difficult. So that you, who might be the moderator, or you're part of the whole process, either you're part of the conflict or you are coming in as an external resource to moderate the conflict, you need to make sure that all the factions involved are ready to forego something, because there is no way that we're going to establish peace at the end of the day without some people somewhere, letting something go. And that is what we need to use as a strategy, to resolve the conflict. Finally, I don't want to belabor the point. I just want to, throw to us a few, guidelines that can help us on how to confront, conflict once it comes. Be mindful of the opinion of others and provide guidelines, like I said, if you are a moderator. While you're establishing, for example, peace in the middle of a conflict, take the opinion of others seriously, don't be biased, and provide professional guidelines, that will help all the factions understand, the peaceful, process. So I wouldn't end, of course, without giving this quote by Theodore Rubin, who said, "The problem is not that there are problems. The problem is expecting otherwise and thinking that having problem is a problem itself." Let us know that having a problem is not a problem by itself. Thank you so very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Eric. Thank you. We're honored to have you talk to us today on the way of conflict. Just to add that wherever there is human interaction, there is bound to be conflict. And we need to look for ways to transform the conflict in such a way that we have positive outcomes and not concentrate on the definitive form of conflict, because the fact that conflict is inherent in human nature means that we must deal with it. And dealing with it means that we transform it to have positive impacts in the community. Thank you very much, Mr. Eric.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Moving forward, I want to introduce to you Mr. Jate Emmanuel. Mr. Jate Emmanuel, are you on? Mr. Jadu Emmanuel, are you with us? Okay, Mr. Jadu Emmanuel is one of the youths that we are very proud of in this country. He is a educationist. He spends his time, his resources, and much more to ensure that youths learn how to effectively and meaningfully take part or meaningfully engage in peace building processes in the community. Like I said, he's a non-violent communication expert, and today he'll be sharing with us his perspective on how we can use non-violent communication to ensure that we have peace in the community. Welcome, Mr. Jato Emmanuel.
Hello, Mr. Emma, we can't hear you. We can't hear you at all.
While we're waiting on Mr. Jose Emmanuel to get fully connected with us, I would love that you keep chipping in your questions and comments into the comment section. I will be very happy to post them to our presenters after the presentations. Mr. Jato, are you with us now?
Maybe you don't use the micro, the headphones at all. Let's see how it happens. Hello, Mr. Emma, are you there?
Yes, hello.
Great. I think this is the best voice so far. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Technology first. Uh, I was saying, I was thanking Mr. Eric for the presentation. He talked on conflict and how conflict is inevitable in our society. And I'm going to share maybe some light on how we can use nonviolent communication in our society. We know Cameroon is going through a lot, and nonviolent communication is a way of life, and it is not only word that we talk from our mouth. It is something we need to live with it day by day. And we live in a society where violence is like a norm, where people are being killed every day, people fight every other day in and day out, and it has gone even interstate and even in our families, in our communities. So nonviolent communication, it is a way to see how we can make connection, make meaning people's life in our society, so that we can live in a peaceful manner and to make contribution to the well-being of others. Maybe we can go to the next slide so that we can from the next slide. Okay, like my first question, maybe like we have already talked of conflict. Maybe I would like people maybe to give some of their insight. What do they understand by Mr. Eric already talked about conflict. What do we understand by violence? Violence, or maybe someone can write in the chat. You can use the chat box. What do you understand by violence, and what is peace to you? Consume much of our time. Understanding of violence and peace. What does peace mean to you? I will dwell much on peace. What does peace? Thank you. social justice. Okay, now I'm okay. It means having a free mind, free society, state of feeling safe and secured. Yes, according to me, I will agree with the chat. Yes. Yes, I agree to your own said. If war start from the mind, so peace also start from the mind. This is to say that to have peace in society, we don't need to look up of people or some only some leaders to start peace. We need to start begin with you and I, and tell us that we need to do this or we need to practice this. We need to practice peace. We need to live peacefully from our individual level, from our own home. Like it is always said, maybe for my tribe, that when you want to go out or you want to tell someone to fix the compound, you need to first clean your own. So we need to human survivor in the world, a need to that communication plays in creating a deteriorating peace relationship with ourselves. And this means that and it affects our own individual being. People who don't commit the violence so affected. Maybe Ma Oban Road will
Emmanuel, we still have challenges hearing you. We can't hear you. Maybe you also take the mic a little away from your mouth, and that might be good, but we have some. Perfect.
Okay, can you
Yes,
get me now?
yes, it's far better now. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I was talking about the importance of communication in conflict, because we know conflict is in our society. So if there is no good communication with one another, it can either increase conflict, the conflict. Next slide, please. Okay, we would go straight away non-violent communication, where maybe some grounds we said it was by Marshall, a Jewish who they trans in USA at that time, and then he was living in a small community they Detroit. And maybe if I want to equate Detroit in a community in Bamenda, I talk about Tatmulung, which is believed to be a community of Poland. And when he was living there, he was also facing racial discrimination, and people keep treating. Why do people treat people, or why do people treat people because they don't belong to such group? And then he has some basic question that he was asking: how can we contribute? Why do human beings, can you, hello?
Yes, we can hear you. I think the earphone really has a challenge. If there's an alternative, that would be excellent. Yeah, once the Emma comes back on, I think I'll just go through a few comments on the chat here. Conflict can be seen as an opportunity to transform relationships for good. Yes, that's from Oba Rose. Then never be in a haste in a conflicting environment. That's from Michelson. Please, in the aspect of health, is conflict not detrimental if it is considered as a way of strengthening relationships? I think Eric should take this question. Um, Let me go through and then Eric, are you there? You can prepare to take that question, which says in the aspect of health please, in the aspect of health, is conflict not detrimental if it is considered as a way of strengthening relationships? Then embracing conflict, different perspectives is very important in transformation of conflicts. That's from Obarose. Then from Emma, conflict is inevitable in our society. We just need to find ways to resolve it. We need to affirm our differences and avoid stereotypes and prejudices. And then we also have, yeah, I believe the Anglophone crisis can bring us the best benefit at the end if we go the way of conflict. And then we have same presentation I did yesterday in World Press Freedom Day. That's awesome. Thank you, Obase Rose. Mr. Emma, are you already on board? Just let us know immediately
Yes.
you're on board. Okay.
Yes, I'm back.
All right, perfect. I think you will continue, and then we have one question for Eric, which he can take immediately after you finish.
Okay, maybe we'll go to the. I was talking about some key questions where Marsha was asking himself. And then we are talking about exploring this question. He found that there's differences in relationship, and he also talked about the importance of communication as a means of helping us to stay connected to our human need. And he start from assumption about human beings and their interaction. Next slide. And now some basic assumption that Marsha, when he was developing this concept of nonviolent communication, he was asked. He said, all human beings share the same need, means our needs are universal. And then he said the most important need is contributing to the lives of others, contributing to the well-being of other human beings, as well as when you contribute to the well-being of another human being, it also contributes to our own being. Like for example, when you do something to someone and the person appreciate you, you also feel fulfilled that you have made a meaning to someone's life. He said letting go of the ideas of wrong and right, good and bad. And this is in the context where our society is shaped, or even our educational system. They always say these are the first 5 students and these are the last 5 students. This is giving judgmental, being judgmental to other people. Like even Einstein said, we cannot judge a fish by the way it climbs the tree. So each and every one of us has his own ability. We should treat people respecting their own ability and skills of life. And he said we have the choice to connect or not to connect with other people's feelings as well as need. It means that we can belong, and then no matter what someone's need person is asking for the need, maybe we dislike the person's behavior, but we can still connect with the person's need. And he said we have responsibilities for our choices that we make. No matter the choice you make, you know that you are responsible for it. And then the choice we make, we have consequences, and the consequences would follow us no matter what we do. Like we talk about the situation of what is going on in Cameroon now. People resorted to maybe to violence to resolve the needs they were asking. We went to people pick up arms. Now we are facing the consequences. Everyone is involved. So people, we need to take those responsibilities. When we want to take an action, we need to think of the consequences so that we'll be responsible for it. Next slide. Why nonviolent communication in our society? Why do we need nonviolent communication in our society? Nonviolent means taking the responsibility for abiding to our human connection. That is why it is Marsha was talking about is that why do we need nonviolent communication in our society? It helps us to connect to one another, to communicate like brothers and sisters, to speak. It is also called a language from heart to heart. When you speak to someone from your heart, it means it is something that is really important to one another. When you are sending a child to do something, and then if you have that love, you feel that love for that child, you cannot send a child to do something which is dangerous for him or her. It is not the posture of removing oneself from conflict that makes the true non-violent man, but it is placing ourselves at the heart of the situation, meaning that conflict can never lack from our society where two or more people are gathered. Even one person, when a person, there's a conflict, we have intra-conflict and interpersonal conflict, meaning that we cannot live in a society without conflict. But the main thing is for us to look for strategy, look for ways on how to resolve this conflict that is facing us in our society. Next slide. And then I'm going to talk about the first steps of nonviolent communication that Marsha used, because the first step he talked of was observation. Observation here means what have you seen or what have you heard another person say? When someone says something, what has the person said? What have you heard the person saying? And here he used the lens of he used a camera lens, like meaning when you used to take a camera lens, what the camera picks, it is exactly what the camera has seen. But for us, most of the time we base on judgment. We take a lot of judgment and evaluating others. When someone says something, we really go deep to start analyzing the person, giving judgment, giving blames, and making the person to feel he is a bad person and why we are the right person. According to nonviolent, it is not the case. We need to look at people. We need to get to find out the need, what the person is saying, to say what exactly what the person has said. What have you heard the person say? And not to make judgment, because a camera lens will take exactly what the camera has observed or the camera has seen. Like this picture, I may want us to maybe say one or two things on this picture for us to just see the way we used to make our society, because our society is based on a context where we do a lot of judgment, a lot of evaluation without observing. I may give like 2 minutes for someone maybe to say what he or she has seen from this picture. What is your observation about this picture? Just 2 minutes. You can unmute yourself and maybe speak.
Maybe I can speak. The picture looks like
I have seen on a picture on the wall. I've seen a picture in a frame, and in that frame, I've seen someone who is black in complexion, looking emaciated, because I can see like the ribs on his bones, the bones on his ribs rather, and think that's what I've seen. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, any other person, you can post maybe the what you have seen on the chat. Any other person?
Somebody say they see someone who is an angry.
I didn't get you well. Come again.
Someone says they see someone who is hungry.
Okay.
And angry.
Hungry and angry.
I think there's more on the chat.
Yes.
Suffering from marasmus.
Suffering from marasmus.
Yeah, I think that's all.
Thank you so much for your observation or your insight of this picture. This is how we human beings we dive into conclusion. When someone said it is seeing someone who is angry. When you say someone is angry, what do you mean by someone is angry? When you say someone is hungry, without the person telling you that the person is hungry. If you take a camera and take that and as with this picture, with that camera tells you that this person is hungry or this person is suffering from marasmus. Maybe that is the nature of the person. So we do a lot of judgment. We judge people a lot.
This laptop no, yeah.
And then the next step it is feelings and thought. Feelings and thought is about what is going on within you. What are you feeling? Like you have seen that picture maybe from the previous slide. What is going on in you? What are you feeling? When our need, the feelings is being triggered from our need, when our needs are being met or they are unmet. And we have the needs. Needs are abstract and universal. It means someone who is in Cameroon has the same need with someone who is in USA, with someone who is in Canada. We have the same need, and we have different strategies to meet our need. And when our needs are not being met, we start having different feelings. And when our needs are met, maybe we start feeling fulfilled, we start feeling courageous, we start feeling secure. But when the needs are not met, we start feeling unsafe, unsecure, insecure. And then Masha also used a request. When we meet, when we go through the first observation, feelings and need, we need to make a request. But most of the time, we human we make demands, not requests. Like for example, maybe you are staying with your child in the house or your junior brother in the house. You maybe always want the person to respect you. Maybe for example, you want to send the person to buy you something from the store. You just said, take this money and go and buy me a packet of Maggie from the store, without asking for the person's feelings and need. Because the person, when you are asking for a request, either the person says yes or no. But most of the time when we are making it, we make it a demand. When we are asking someone something, without the person giving the person a choice to make his or her own reaction or decision from it, it means we are demanding people. And when you make a command or a demand to someone, the person will turn it in another way, and which will becomes a conflict to us, or and then it may lead to violence. And then we may talk about some importance of NVC in our society, or right now in our community, or maybe in our family. When we express ourselves in a non-violent way, it is about honesty. It creates connection. It is a way of conflict resolution. It satisfies personal relation with one another. When you communicate with another person, knowing that another person has feelings, another person had need. When you are sending that child to go and buy something from the store, maybe that person, the child was watching a movie. He had his need of getting connection, of getting what to learn from that movie, but you are sending the child at that moment. Do you consider the person's need at that particular moment? It also prevents us from judging others. Non-violent help us to prevent us from judging others, and it's a respectful way of communicating. When we communicate respectfully, when we communicate knowing that we need to respect one another, and non-violent is a way in which we can help us to reduce the violence in our society, because people we base mostly on judging others, evaluating others, and making demand and not request. When we consider the needs of other people, it helps us to be communicated, to connect with one another, to avoid judging people. Like for example, if you come back from maybe from work and then you see that the plates that are just being put around the house, you need to also consider the person who was at home at that moment, and then think of his need. Why are all those things there? Not that you are, when you tell someone you are very lazy, maybe when you have seen those plates around the house, you said you are very lazy, you are always stubborn. That is being judging, and then the person will tend to start defending his or herself. When you make a request with him, maybe like for example, when you come back from work and see plates on the floor or dirty clothing, you said, I have seen these clothing all over, or maybe on the floor where we used to maybe move or sit in our sitting room, I feel uncomfortable because I need sanity and comfort in the house. Will you be willing next time when you remove your clothing, you should put them in the wash basin, and that can make a connection with the person, expressing yourself with that other person, and this will make a clear communication. Like now, I just wish to say, for us, all of us are involved in this situation. Peace is with everyone. No one is should be left behind. We need to involve even the children. Children are part of peace building process, and peace is not an event, it is a process. It means it goes gradually. We need to involve and let everyone and be part of peace building to let peace reign in our society. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you so very much, Emma. This is wonderful. I've never been able to hear you speak, but I'm really thankful that I had the opportunity to hear you speak, and I think everyone too here. I just want to quickly go through the comments. Um, Someone says NVC can really make us take us out of violent conflicts in society. It takes away moralistic judgments and the spirit of revenge and retaliation. The picture, yeah, great. And then let's look at very true about unmet needs. And this causes conflict, especially with the approach used to address the needs. You know, this reminds me of this saying that we fight with each other because we have unmet needs. And this is one of the real underlying, challenges with conflicts, unmet needs. We need to learn how to find a way to satisfy our needs other than having to approach them in such ways that create especially violent conflict. Then we have all efforts are needed for peace. That's by Mabel. And we don't have any questions. I'll quickly get back to the question to Eric on health, the fact that conflict can bring challenges with health. And so how do we conclude it as positive? Mr. Tombe, over to you on that question.
Thank you, Fedi, and I want to laud Jato for his wonderful insights. Back to the question, that question is from Tanjong Mabel, who asks to know if in the aspect of health is conflict not detrimental, if it is considered as a way of strengthening relationships. In my presentation, I highlighted that conflict is not only, when there is trouble or when there is a problem. The conflict is an opportunity for us that will lead us into harnessing opportunities. Now, this question enables me to go even further on what conflict is actually all about. But in this point, we are not talking about conflict at large. We are looking at the way of conflict, how we should approach conflict. Now, when do you see that conflict is inevitable? For example, if you are part of an organization or a society or a small group, you start seeing changes in the manners of acting, feeling, and thinking. You start seeing changes in behavior and a drop in productivity for some individuals. You now know that at this point in time, conflict is about coming. Conflict is on its way. So what do? Let me go even down to a small village in the Northwest region where there is a chief, a mayor, or a parliamentarian. And let's assume that a lady died because she wanted to put to bed and there wasn't a hospital in place. And then a bike rider who had a minor injury also died because there was no hospital or no doctors and so on and so forth. And then the community decides and say, hey, we are going to come up, and then they start boiling and so on and so forth. If you are the parliamentarian of that municipality, or you are the mayor of that council area, or even the chief of that chiefdom, what do? Do you just seek to allow them to go and manifest their grievances, to say, oh, this is a conflict that's about coming, you just shun it away? No. That is why we say there is a way to approach conflict. That is a conflict that is inevitable. Now, what you need to do is to follow the guidelines that we presented to you to say, hey, you call the people, you look at, do they actually have a reason to stage this protest or to come up strongly like this? So if you go by this approach, there's no way that this approach is going to weaken the health system, as the question says, that is conflict not approaching conflict in this dimension. Is it not going to weaken the health system? I will say no. We are not looking at conflict at a level where it's already breaking, tearing apart individuals, tearing the economy, That is why we say there is a way to approach conflict, because look at conflict at two levels. Conflict being a problem which we don't want, which we don't want to encourage. I love Fedi when he said, if the Anglophone crisis went by the way of conflict, would have brought us so much good than where we are today. We shouldn't have had boys in the bush today, and women and children who have been displaced and all of that, because I don't think a proper approach to this conflict was addressed or was given to it. So to end it, I don't think that if we go by the way of conflict in addressing our challenges, our situations, we're going to jeopardize our health system. No, I don't think it's possible. Thank you.
Okay, Eric, thank you so much for that. I think at this point we don't have any more questions. Can you hear me, please?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Let me know if you can hear me. Okay, great. It looks like we don't have any more questions, and so I'll just read a comment here from. Needs are never in conflict. It is our strategy to meet our needs that cause conflict and violence. And then I agree to that strongly, because you could need food, you could need clothes, you could need a car, you could need, but then the approach to take it to having those things is what can really lead to conflict. And I want to chip in again on health. With respect to our health, if you manage conflict properly, you will end up realizing that you can become of a better health depending on how you really manage conflict. So I'll hand it over to Damaris to see what we have next.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much for facilitating that part. So at this moment, I want to say a big thank you to our panelists, everybody who took a time out of their very busy schedule to share with us some insights on today's subject matter. We want to especially thank everyone who took a time to engage in this discussion. So at this time, Mr. Ferdinand, I would love to hand over to you so you can mention or call for action on any upcoming events or rather.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. I think I'll just quickly indicate one thing that I think cuts across from what we have discussed here today, and from that inspires me with respect to what the speakers have also spoken about today. And it goes thus. It's by Napoleon Bonaparte, who said, "The world suffers a lot. The world suffers a lot, not because of the violence of bad people, but because of the silence of good people." I think that today we have had a lot of good people on this call who have spoken to us. From the youth voices, I believe very strongly that our youth voices are a set of good people. And so they have spoken. And I like to also highlight that one of the greatest things I learned this year in the year 2020 was the relationship between justice and peace. And that peace is like the child that is given birth to by justice. And so someone says here that justice is the husband to conflict, which is the wife. Justice is the husband, and to conflict, which is the wife, and the child, which is born, is peace. I want to thank you, Claude Fonyam, for that wonderful saying. So if we are living with something from here, I want you to go back knowing that we want to see that the community, which is made up of everybody, you and myself, the audience, the whole community, that everybody is strengthened in their minds, is strengthened in their hearts, in their ability to become positive forces towards everything that can enable us to live without differences that we cannot settle. Our differences can be settled. We can settle our differences. It's possible to settle differences when you examine carefully the source of those differences, the cause of those differences. And one key thing that I've learned is listening keenly to each other. Conflict resolution is more about how we listen to each other more than how we really talk. It's really about whether we listen, because when we listen, we get each other. And like we always say, there is this Form 5 reader, which we used to have, and there's always this aspect of that reader called understanding and response. If you don't understand, I think you should not even respond. There must be response. Response must be a product of understanding. So we can be able to make a difference if we lean forward and give an ear. And when we're listening to each other, whether at home or in a tribal or intertribal, or like in this case of the Northwest Southwest, I don't care who is talking. If the other person on the other side is able to lean forward and put their ear to the ground and lean forward and listen, not with the intention of waiting for the person to speak so they can speak, so they respond. If you can lean forward to listen, listening in order to understand, there will be an appropriate response that will be dished out, an appropriate response that will be dished out, and that will help the relationship to be able to be sustained. So these are some of the things that we have. I think the call to action here is let's listen to each other. Let's continue to engage and be strengthened in our ability to be part of the solution and not part of the problem. And let's all be strong. I want to add my voice to Damari's voice to thank all our panelists of today, especially our three guest speakers, Madam Sally, Mr. Kombe Eric, who is my co-pioneer CSP fellow. I also want to appreciate Mr. Emmanuel. Thank you very, very much for being part of this community engagement webinar. And I'm sure that we have been able to send out some words that are going to bear fruit, that are going to reach to some people's minds, and people are going to try to understand what we're trying to say about the importance of settling differences as part of building peace. So thank you very much, everyone, and I wish all of us a very great rest of our day.
Thank you very much, sir. A big thank you to everyone once more. Thank you for your engagements in the discussions. Thank you for your perspectives. Thank you for your time. So at this moment, I want us to take a general peek. Maybe you just put on your camera and give us a lovely smile. So we have a general picture.
Do we put on our cameras?
Yes, we should, sir.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Is everybody's camera on?
Great.
Thank you. Thank you. That is lovely. Thank you. Let's just hold on so we take a good shot. Right. I think that's great. That is
Did
great.
we do the
Thank
peace
you.
sign?
Sorry. Yes.
Okay.
Great. So we can.
We could do the peace sign for everybody.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
All right. That was a great shot. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, everyone.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.